evening. 7 years ago this weekend, a massive snowstorm called the Valentine's Day storm smashed into the east coast of the United States, causing significant problems for a lot of people. Those problems were exacerbated by human error. Airlines leaving passengers stranded on runways hour after hour after hour and not bringing them into the gates. Other airlines letting people see the gate was not far away but not letting them off the plane. Stranding people on crowded planes for 4, 5, 6, as long as 9 hours. The passengers revolted and said, "Let us off. We can walk to the building from here." But people did not respond at the airlines and let the passengers off. Passengers expressed their frustration. They could literally see 100 yards away. There was the airport. There was a door they could walk through. But the authorities said, "You are not allowed to leave these planes." Hour upon hour upon hour. An airline spokesman helpfully explained the situation, that of course this is all about passenger safety, because nothing is more safe than being in a plane for 9 hours, stranded with people who have colds and flus and having overflowing toilets. But this situation went on hour after hour after hour for hundreds of people. We get frustrated when things don't seem to work right, especially when they don't seem to work right for completely illogical reasons. This is a construction project in the West Village of New York in front of my apartment. It was going on when I moved in 2.5 years ago. It goes on today. It must be a massive project, or if it takes 2.5 years, right? No, they're replacing a water main. They're replacing some water pipes. Hashtag fail. 2.5 miles northeast of there is a building built in the 1930s. It was the tallest building built, and it was the tallest building in America and indeed the world for 30 years, the Empire State Building. The crazy optimists who built the Empire State Building estimated it would take 18 months to build, 18 months to open. Guess what? They were wrong. It took 15 months, and it finished below budget. Now, not everything in the world is wrong. Some stuff actually does work. I can think of no greater example than my favorite way to get between the city and the airport, the Hong Kong Airport Express. This was built on the radical notion that there should be high-speed rail connecting airports with major population centers. What a crazy idea. But they managed to pull it off. The trains are fast. They go 80 miles an hour. They are frequent. They are comfortable, as you can possibly be. And they run between the downtown and the airport every 10 minutes, a 23-minute journey. Wow, that must be expensive, right? Not at all. It's about $12 US to make that trip and to make it quickly. Meanwhile, here's how I get to the airport. This lovely piece of modern technology it's 12 years old. It has about 130,000 miles on it. It is really uncomfortable for the passenger. It's really uncomfortable for the driver, who's in that, unfortunately, for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it's really unfortunate that it's uncomfortable because you're going to be spending a lot of time in it, getting out to the airport. No matter what time of day you go, this is what the commute is going to look like. Not only are you uncomfortable, you're also, of course, making the environment much worse because you're pumping literally tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. So the question is, why? Why does it sometimes seem like things just do not work? Why does it seem like things can be so broken in incident after incident? You can all think probably of things that annoy you, that don't seem to work. You've got failing schools, a stagnant economy, bickering politicians who are basically blame mongers. You may not be able to get a cell phone signal in downtown San Francisco. You may see bridges collapsing. You may see the persistence of urban poverty. You may have slow internet connections. The list goes on and on and on. Why is it that some things seem like they just do not work and are broken? Well, I think it's because the world, and I think it's because this country has lost the spirit of what I call GSD. GSD are 3 very, very simple letters, but it's one very, very powerful concept. GSD basically means get shit done. Yeah. We have to get to a world. We have to get back to a world where we're actually talking about getting stuff done, getting shit done. If you have a child at home in a PG-13 audience, you can call it get stuff done, whatever you want. Call it what you want. Let's just start doing more and more and more of it. I have a basic theory that there are 2 types of people. And of course, there's an old joke that there are 2 types of people. Those who divide the world into 2 types of people, and those who don't divide the world into 2 types of people. But I'm the former. I believe that there are GSD people and there are non-GSD people. And if we can simply challenge the world and challenge all of you and challenge our leaders and challenge ourselves to be more GSD, we can actually fix all these problems that are broken. I think if we can put GSD into our DNA, it means we can be the generation that solves absolutely huge problems. Now, it sounds easy, but I know from my own experience working for 8 years at Microsoft and the last 13 years at Room to Read, that there are what I call GSD inhibitors. These are things that really block progress. And if we know these inhibitors, we can battle against them. They're probably fairly basic. Many of you have probably run into them before. Bureaucracy, of course. We all know what a bureaucrat is. A bureaucrat is somebody who cares more about process than they actually care about results. They care more about petty bickering and their own power than they care about actual results. So if we can crush bureaucracy, this is going to help us a lot. When I worked at Microsoft, I once walked into a meeting that had 16 people in it. And I said, let me ask everybody a question. Why are we in this meeting? 16 people looked at me quizzically. There was no answer. It had simply appeared on their calendar. I canceled the meeting and said, let's go save 2 people days of work and actually get something done. Let's GSD. One of my friends who works for a major financial services company talks about the fact that she feels like they spend forever talking about the strategy, and then they decide that. She's like, oh good, we talked about the strategy for months, now we can focus on the actual implementation. Nope, guess what? Many, many, many more months of actually debating the implementation plan. One of my friends, Sheryl Sandberg, says it well. Done is better than perfect. That is a comment that I like a lot. I think it's fantastic, and we need to basically have that GSD mentality. Second GSD inhibitor, lousy leadership. We have so many pretend leaders. We have so many fake leaders in this world today who unfortunately want the power, want the perks, want the prestige, but don't want to actually get anything done. You can look, for example, I don't know, maybe no further than our nation's Congress, who last year their approval rating hit 15%. The only thing some politicians seem good at doing these days is bickering and blame-mongering amongst each other. And that number means 1 of 7 Americans last year approved of Congress's. Imagine if 6 of 7 of your constituents didn't like the job you were doing. Well, the news is actually that number went worse. It went earlier this year down to single digits, to 9%, meaning that 9 out of 10 people no longer liked the job they were doing. Lack of leadership is one of the key things that crushes us, and we have to challenge ourselves to be better leaders, challenge our leaders to be better leaders. Third GSD inhibitor is fear. There are lots of kinds of fear. Fear of failing, fear of making a commitment to actually get something done, fear of being yelled at by somebody if things don't work out. We have to get over the whole notion of fear and come beyond it. There must have been JetBlue employees, because it's an otherwise really well-run airline. I fly it a lot and I like it. But on that day, there had to have been JetBlue employees who said, this is stupid. I should just fill in the blank. There must have been JFK Airport employees who said, this is stupid. I should just fill in the blank. But they didn't. Why? Possibly lousy leadership who didn't empower their employees to actually use their brains and make snap decisions when needed. But I think a lot of it comes down to fear. They probably had fear of being yelled at by some arbitrary authority, which our nation's airports seem to be full of these days. They might have had a fear of losing their job, but if somebody lost their job for being GSD, wouldn't you hire that person immediately to say, God bless you for being GSD and fixing the problem? Lack of passion is a fourth inhibitor. The world quite often is lacking in passion. The speakers you've seen that have gone before me, it's been a pleasure to watch them because they're full of passion for what they do. Yet lack of passion permeates so many parts of our society. I fly a lot for my job, and one thing that's interesting is all the 5-star airlines in the world are listed here. There are 7 of them. Not a single 5-star airline actually is based out of the United States, Canada, or Europe. They're all New World airlines. Why? They all fly the same types of jets from Boeing and Airbus. They all fly the same routes. It's very similar seating. It's very similar food. Why? It's passion. It's passion for customer service. As E.M. Forster once said, one person with passion is better than 40 who are just phoning it in. And I think we need to challenge ourselves to have more passion. And finally, the fifth and final GSD inhibitor is what my friend and business blogger Seth Godin calls vampires. Not teenage novel vampires. We're talking about energy vampires. You know who these people are. They're the people who suck all the positive energy as much as they can out of work groups, out of study groups, out of their lives. We have to kill off the vampires, people. We all know the type. It's the Debbie Downer. There's people in meetings. They're just waiting for you to throw out a really cool, creative idea, and they're waiting there with their heat-seeking missile. Do they want to shoot your idea out of the air? There's the people who say helpful things like, oh, we tried that once, but it didn't work. The vampires have to be defeated. We need garlic to fend off those vampires. GSD is a garlic, or the quote from one of my favorite composers, Sibelius, that nobody ever erected a statue in honor of a critic. So when someone's going to criticize you and tell you why it won't work, use Sibelius, use garlic. Read Seth Godin's essay on vampires. It is incredible. So I became obsessed with this notion of GSD. And I wrote my second book, Creating Room to Read, A Story of Hope in the Battle for Global Literacy, all about this concept of GSD. How can we get the world to a place where we're talking about actually doing things rather than simply complaining or moaning? And with apologies to Stephen Covey, I came up with what I think of as the 7 habits of highly GSD people. What is it that lets some people get stuff done while others are simply accepting mediocrity? So my next 5 minutes will be all about just that, the 7 habits of highly GSD people. Number 1 is simple. Bold goals attract bold people. Those who choose to set bold goals will attract bold people behind them. We talked earlier today at TEDxUNC about John F. Kennedy's call to put a man on the moon within the decade. 8 years later, it was done. How about the guys who said, let's catalog all the world's information and make it instantly accessible from anywhere in the world on any device for free? That was kind of a bold goal, and they built an amazing company as a result of it. Martin Luther King, children being judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Bold goals attract bold people. You know where I'm going with this. The corollary is also true. Wimpy goals attract wimpy people. So you got to choose in life which you're going to throw out there. The corollary is true, but what's really important is the add-on. While bold goals attract bold people attract other bold people. Second habit of highly GSD people is to refuse to accept the status quo. The status quo often needs to be changed, and it's up to us to change it. When we started Room to Read, my co-founders and I were passionate about literacy, bringing kids in the developing world who had lost the lottery of life the chance to read and be literate in their mother tongue from a young age. The issue we faced, however, was that the for-profit publishers don't publish books in languages spoken by poor people. They publish books in English, French, Spanish, German, etc., but they're not going to publish books in languages spoken by the poor. Catch-22. You don't have books in your mother tongue, you're not going to get educated. You're not educated, you're always going to remain poor. Well, Dinesh, Aaron, my co-founders, and I decided to change that. We scratched our chin and said, how can we find the Dr. Seuss of the developing world? How can we find the J.K. Rowling of the developing world? How can we find the Goodnight Moon of Cambodia? Or find the Tintin of South Africa? And what you see here is what we've created because we refuse to accept the status quo that publishers don't publish books in languages spoken by poor people. We said, that's fine, we understand that. They have their profit motive, but we have a GSD motive, which is to help millions of kids in the developing world to gain the gift of literacy and education from a young age. So I hope as you see this here, you'll be inspired to challenge the status quo, because I think what you'll see here is that we have indeed found the J.K. Rowlings and the Dr. Seuss's of the developing world, and have empowered them to create award-winning, culturally relevant children's literature. These books you see here, these titles, these are just some of the titles that we've produced. We've actually now produced over 900 original titles for kids, and this year we'll do our 1,000th original title. We're really psyched about that. We've put 13 million books in the hands of kids, and I want to assure every single one of you who's worried about the plight of the lost baby elephant that all of these books do indeed have happy endings, okay? So don't stress out about that. Third habit of GSD is that action is better than talking. There's too much talk, blah, blah, blah in the world, not enough action. There is a reason that we don't have something for kids called talking heroes. Right? You guys get that? Took a few seconds there, but yeah. Action heroes. In the first row is one of my favorite action heroes, Nicole Hurd, the founder of College Advising Corps. College Advising Corps is an amazing group. Many of you have heard of it. It's based here in Chapel Hill. Nicole didn't talk about the fact that high schools were missing counselors and that prevents kids from going to college. She acted on it. There's now over 500 college advisors around the world serving 125,000 students, and this organization is like 2.5 years old because Nicole's all about action. She's an action hero. Paul Farmer, the founder of Partners in Health, an action hero. He didn't talk about the lack of health care in Haiti and Rwanda. He went out and acted upon it. What's most important is that neither of them asked for permission, neither of them waited for permission, they just simply went out and did it. Fourth is very simple. What gets measured gets done. The way to bust through bureaucracy and inertia is to set bold goals and then meticulously track yourself. When we started Room to Read, I had 2 goals in mind that my co-founders agreed to. 1, open more libraries in our first decade than Carnegie opened in his lifetime. And secondly, open more libraries in our first decade than Starbucks opened coffee outlets in their first decade. Because if the world needs a good latte, the world damn well needs literacy. Now these seem like crazy goals, but we tracked it relentlessly, we reported on it relentlessly, we announced to the world how we were doing. What gets measured gets done. The good news for us is that what's gotten done is that 8 million kids are now enrolled in our programs that help them to achieve literacy. We outdid Carnegie. Carnegie did 2,500 libraries in his lifetime. I'm very, very proud to say that we are now at 6x Carnegie and have opened 16,000 libraries across the developing world, serving 8.8 million kids. Because we measured it. Now the question is, can we actually out Starbucks? Well, data does not lie. They're in green, we're in blue. We're actually out Starbucking Starbucks. We're psyched about that also. Again, what gets measured gets done. And yes, right now I am high on their product. That's why I'm talking so fast. Just a couple of quick points, the final habits of GSD people. It's not about you, it's about the team. Leaders need to be egoless. We need leaders to talk about their team's achievements, not their own achievements. And to always, and I don't always do this myself, but I try hard to not say I, but to say we, and invite people in. Room to Read now has 12,000 people involved in 57 fundraising chapters around the world, helping us to raise millions of dollars because we asked them to come in and we were trying to be egoless. 6th is be a cheerleader, rally the troops. This is what I think of as vampire repellent. If you're out there telling your people how great they are and praising what they do well, they're going to basically keep on doing it. I spend 2 hours a week doing something I call a thankathon, where all I do is sit and write handwritten notes to people who have done great things. I never think I have time for it, but it's absolutely the highest return on investment of my time because it makes people feel great and it makes them feel recognized. And there's an old saying, people will not remember what you say, they will remember how you make them feel. So that's very important. And then 7th and final is never, ever, ever be afraid to ask for the order. People can't read your minds. People are busy. I was petrified trying to learn how to be a fundraiser at Room to Read when I started. I invited a lot of people in. I reminded myself, I'm not asking for money for myself. I'm asking for money so that more kids who have lost the lottery of life can go to school. So I asked. In 13 years with no fundraising experience, our team's now raised over $300 million for our cause because we were not afraid to ask for the order. So in closing, we're psyched about the number of kids we've reached. We have a long, long, long ways to go. My question for all of you is, who is ready in your own lives to GSD? About 6 of you. Okay, good. I want to close in 1 minute with the GSD pledge. I want all of you to commit to taking the GSD pledge. It's very simple. Number 1, you got to live a GSD life. You got to live by example. People get involved in Room to Read because they know we're GSD. They follow us because of that. Secondly, talk about GSD. If you see it happening, praise it. If you don't see it happening, call people on it and say, why are we not GSDing? In soccer, we have something called the red card. I'm inventing something I call the GSD card. If you see people not GSDing, throw that red card into the air, people, and challenge people to GSD. Finally, make a pledge that you will do something different this week, this month, this quarter, this year. Write it down, share it with others. What gets measured gets done. Take a GSD pledge. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's return our country to greatness. Let's use our talents to GSD. Whatever you do it big, do it with passion, do it with a GSD attitude. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.